We're joined now by the former governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. And thank you, Governor, first of all, for coming on with us. It leads into this conversation that we started earlier in the hour about the so-called changing face of the Republican Party. I think Vice President Pence was alluding to it there once again. What's happening in the Republican Party today?
Well, I think you see all across America, not only amongst Republicans, but amongst voters in general. There's been for years this frustration with politicians who say almost anything and then go to Washington and don't deliver on those promises. That's why I think Bernie Sanders on the left was very popular. Donald Trump 8 years ago commanded the attention of the voters, got the nomination, and then went off to Washington to perform. And I think that's why he's out front right now, is even if you don't like every bit of his style, there's a large segment of the electorate, at least in the primary, who feels like, hey, this is somebody who actually did the things that they said they were going to do. And that's pretty compelling at a time when many don't.
Okay, so that segment of the electorate, the primary electorate in the Republican Party, is obviously much bigger than the other segment that's represented, I guess, by the former vice president. So we'll do a couple of things. Horse race first. We'll look at the numbers, and whatever poll it is, this one happens to show President Trump 45 because it's a New Hampshire poll, specifically Nikki Haley 15, Ron DeSantis 11, Chris Christie 10, and everybody else in single digits. The other polls we've had are some variation of that, right? So if you're representing the more traditional side of the Republican Party, how do you counter that? Or is there a way to counter that tomorrow night? I mean, how would you play this if you're on that stage?
Well, it's make or break time. And what by that I mean is they just can't perform well. I thought a month ago here in Milwaukee, where I'm standing, there were a number of candidates that had a good performance that night, but good is not good enough. When the former President Trump has such a commanding lead, one or more of these candidates are going to have a breakthrough moment or series of moments tomorrow night in Simi Valley. They can't just perform well compared to the others. They've got to make such a convincing case that people who right now put their faith behind Donald Trump as the nominee in 2024 have second thoughts and say, well, maybe this candidate is a better person not only to nominate, but a better person to put in the office of the presidency. Right now, I haven't seen that. I certainly didn't see it last month in Milwaukee. And I think a number of those candidates are going to really have to step up, and you're going to probably see a lot of fireworks.
Fireworks we'll see from Christie, right? We saw that in the last debate. Maybe Nikki Haley, as she's pulled well head-to-head against former President Trump. Let's talk about the former vice president, though, just for a moment. We played part of his interview from earlier in the day on NewsNation, and there was a group of former Reagan administration officials, which again tells you how much the party, I think, has changed over the years, that endorsed Vice President Pence in this letter to Politico. And the quote from it was, "We urge our fellow Republicans to join us in supporting Mike Pence in the Republican primary. Together we can ensure that timeless conservative principles exemplified by Ronald Reagan and Mike Pence continue to guide our party and lead our nation toward a brighter future." So again, Simi Valley, California, Reagan Library, beautiful setting tomorrow night. But are those really timeless Republican principles, or have they kind of gone by the wayside at this point in 2023?
Well, I think it's style over substance. I think if you look at the policies that we saw during the 4 years of Donald Trump and Mike Pence, in many regards, they're very much like the Ronald Reagan 8 years in office and the legacy that he left. The style is obviously very different, right? Ronald Reagan was very much the optimist. He drew me and others of my generation into being conservatives and optimists and felt better about America. I think the contrast that Mike Pence, or for that matter, some of the others have, is if you like the policy, but you don't like the chaos, that would be his argument in terms of why you should go with him. So I think in the end, it's not a shift on substance, on tax cuts, regulatory reform, standing up against our foes, communists and otherwise around the world. Those policies are very similar. It's the style that's different.
Well, it's a little more than style, Governor, I would argue. And the reason I would argue it is simple. The real split between President Trump and his former vice president happened on January 6th of 2021. So even though we're now seeing a more aggressive Mike Pence, say, in this primary, we're not hearing much about that. I mean, he could draw that line and say, listen, I stood up for the Constitution, the president didn't. He doesn't do that. Sometimes in interviews, I don't know that he'll do it tomorrow night on the debate stage. If he doesn't, you have to assume he would think that doesn't obviously play well in a Republican primary with the voters. What do you think?
No, I think voters in general, not just Republican ones, have moved past January 6th. They know what happened then. A lot of folks didn't like that. Obviously, we were concerned at the time. But that's almost more than a year and a half ago. People understand what was going on. I think most Republicans understand Mike Pence's point about the Constitution.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.